Okay, I actually just recorded, maybe I'll post this one another day and spread them out since I almost never do videos and now I'm doing 2 back to back, but I just remembered another question that I had in a comment from last week's video that I thought was a good question, and I'm gonna forget it like exactly, but kind of just like what I recall from it that I want to answer. And it was like something along the lines of like, I'm in recovery, and what do I do if I genuinely, like, at what point can I say, like, I genuinely really like the lower fat version, I like the sugar-free version of this food more than the full fat? You know, can I do that? Like, if I'm in recovery and I have the other stuff and then I realize I actually like the diet version of it better? And my answer is this. First of all, it's not even an option for a very long time after recovery. Wouldn't even like consider it. It's just a straightforward, always have the non-diet version. Even if it's a preference thing, I always say like rewiring your brain is more important than your preference, unfortunately, in this case. And so for a very long time, you need to have the full fat version and the non-diet version. And it could just be that you acquired a taste for the sugar-free or the fat-free or the whatever it was, because that's all that was available then, right? And so you've acquired this taste for this sugar-free diet version of food. And by doing that, you've avoided and not had the full fat version. And so by avoiding a food, it becomes scary to you. So when you're in recovery and you start entering back full fat, full sugar versions of things, you're going to have a pretty high level of anxiety. And if you're anything like I was in recovery, when I had really high anxiety around eating a certain food, I couldn't taste the food. Didn't taste like anything, right? A good example of this would have been like sugar-free pudding, full fat pudding. I'd eat the sugar-free pudding with absolutely no anxiety. It was a totally safe food and I could totally eat it and I had no issues with it. And I loved it. It was so good. I loved it. I loved it, right? With fat-free Cool Whip, right? Or fat-free whipping cream. I just loved, that was so good to me. It's like the best thing ever, right? And then I went into recovery and I tried the full fat version. I was like, nope, I don't like it. I don't like it as much as the sugar-free. Do you know why I didn't though? Because my anxiety was so incredibly high. That's why I didn't like it. That's why I was convinced that the other version was better, okay? And so when you're tackling the full fat versions of things and you're kind of shifting from the diet stuff, keep eating it. You'll acquire a taste for it and it'll taste really good. And when you do that, as you keep doing that and the anxiety goes down because you continue to expose yourself to it, then you'll be able to fully taste it. And 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10, you'll be like, yeah, that is much better. Yogurt was another food for me. Or I'd eat like the low fat, low calorie yogurt. Then I started buying like full fat, really good, thick yogurt. And I was like, at first I'm like, ugh, it's like so pasty and so thick and ugh, I don't like it, you know? And I was like, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Preference, I can't prioritize preference over the mental rewiring. So I kept buying it. I kept buying it with all the anxiety and all the fear and not tasting it. And I kept doing it and I kept doing it and kept doing it. And eventually, as the anxiety came down, I was able to admit to myself and I was able to finally fully taste it and be like, oh, gosh, dang it. Yes, this does taste really good. And then once you've been eating the full fat versions, you can't go back to the lighter versions. And that might scare your eating disorder. But remember, what we're trying to do here is not have an eating disorder anymore. So this is all good stuff. Okay. Think about, I use the example, if you're a client of mine, you probably heard this one. Think about like, if every time you went to McDonald's and got a Big Mac as a kid, you got slapped in the face really hard over every time. Eventually you kind of stop craving Big Macs, right? Because you kind of paid for it afterwards, kind of got beat up. And so of course you weren't going to want that Big Mac. And it's the same thing in eating disorders. You've conditioned yourself to not like certain foods over and over and over again because you get really negative feedback when you eat it. So therefore you don't eat it and then you avoid it. And then the fear grows bigger and bigger and bigger. So when you eat that full fat version of yogurt, when you eat the Big Mac, when you eat the full calorie pudding, it'll feel like you're getting slapped in the face. It won't really, but you won't really be getting slapped in the face, but mentally you'll be getting a beating, right? And it's going to be really uncomfortable. But you have to keep going. You can't stop. You have to keep going through that and through that and through that and realizing it's actually not a threat and it's actually can't really hurt you. And then eventually that feedback that you get when you eat the challenging food that's so negative will eventually get quiet and it won't be there eventually. Okay. So that's how you get through that question that she asked, is like, well, since I prefer the lower calorie, the low fat versions, can I eat them? And the answer is no. Keep eating them, keep eating them until you can say you can eat the full fat version with absolutely no anxiety whatsoever for a long period of time. And then you go back to the diet version. Let's say you really still are just dying for it, and tell me if you really truly prefer it over the full fat version. That's my advice for that. Okay, have a good day.